somebody else with it?
Yeah, their food.
Drive around.
It's a big county. It really is.
All right, good evening.
Good evening.
My name is John Margie. This is the meeting of the ARPA Committee. Our guests from the Plymouth County Commissioners are Tom O'Brien and Jared Valenzuela. And we do have a quorum tonight, and I think we'll start off with the meeting minutes from the last meeting, Dan?
I emailed those out. I didn't bring copies.
I have a copy if you want them.
Do you want a copy? So if you haven't seen them, take a look at them, if you have them. And just, I'll take a motion on whether to accept them or make amendments.
Am I a voting member? I don't think I am, right?
No.
I don't think
So
you
I
are.
can't make a motion.
I motion to vote the minutes.
Motion made by Nadia to accept the minutes, second by Ken. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, unanimous. All right, so again, our agenda tonight is going to be intake of information from the folks from the Plymouth County Commissioner's Office, who I addressed earlier. I just want to mention the fact that I have great faith in the County Commissioner's Office. It's not to demean you guys publicly, but it's a group that does a lot of work in the background for the county, gets a lot of work done, and as you come to know what they do, you appreciate the time that they put in. And I've found my own observations across my background that the Plymouth County Commissioners are actually some of the best in the state. So probably even the country too. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Jared and Tom.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I'll just kick it off quick, Mr. Chairman, and through you to the membership. Certainly grateful for the opportunity to be before you folks tonight, and certainly looking forward to getting your feedback. And hopefully, if you have some questions, we'll try and answer them. If not, we'll definitely try and work on getting you some answers. Just real quick, some broad strokes. Certainly, it's interesting Plymouth County's journey to this point in our history. When the pandemic hit, of course, Congress passed the CARES Act, which allotted about $90 million to Plymouth County. And as some might recall, the administration and a handful of even local municipalities were very distrustful and did not believe in the capacity of Plymouth County to perform that job. 2.5 years later, we can say with confidence that not only did we do it well, and we're confident in saying that, but we exceeded all expectations. And before I forget, I have to give most of that credit to Treasurer Tom O'Brien, his staff, and his team, Jeffrey Welch, Special Assistant Matt Hanley, and as well as our support staff in the Commissioner's Office, Frank Basler, my colleagues, Greg Hanley and Sandra Wright, who, of course, send their regrets they can't join tonight as well, and my predecessor. Long story getting unintentionally longer, Plymouth County managed to deliver more money faster and cheaper than any other entity did in Massachusetts. We did it for less than 1%, and we were able to do that because we foisted a lot of responsibility on the Treasurer's Office with no added benefit to him aside from a nice pat on the back and me giving him flowery praise in public. But the proof is in the results. Through the CARES Act, we found, I decided doing a couple of comparisons. There are 26 towns in one city in Plymouth County, the city of Brockton. And I looked at one or two towns when I was doing a comparison for a state senator in another district, and I noted that a couple of those towns were, in Plymouth County, had received significantly more money, twice as much in some cases, or close to twice as much, as like-sized communities outside Plymouth County, which led me to do an entire county-wide comparison. So at the conclusion of the CARES Act, the community that we compared East Bridgewater to was the town of Raynham, so local town, close town, similar size population, because that was the formula. Their cap with the Commonwealth was $1,261,944. East Bridgewater's cap with Plymouth County was $2,308,305. And those were funds that went, of course, to reimbursing all sorts of incurred expenses. We did it at less than 1%, which has received national recognition. So we're extremely proud of the CARES Act. When the American Recovery Plan came on, once again, we looked at our trustee treasurer and once again heaped some more responsibility on him. But we're certainly lucky to have his knowledge and expertise and commitment to this. So that's all I have for now. I'll hand it off to Treasurer O'Brien, and we'll be jumping back and forth, but I'll mostly defer to his knowledge as well.
Thank you, Commissioner. And yeah, just as a frame of reference, we have 3 county commissioners. As Jared mentioned, it's Commissioner Wright, she's the chair, Commissioner Hanley, and Commissioner Valenzola. I know Commissioner Wright and Commissioner Hanley wish they could be here, but we found that if we spread out our resources, we're even more effective. I'm the county treasurer. I have been for a number of years now. I appreciate the kind words from Jared. It was a big step for us to take to administer the CARES Act. Bigger counties with more staff weren't able to do it as effectively as we were able to do it. As the Commissioner mentioned, we received national recognition for our administration of this program. The fact that we were able to do it for under 1% put us in the top 1% of counties in terms of administration of the CARES Act. And as the Commissioner mentioned, you folks received 2 times more than like-sized communities because we administered that program and sent the money directly to you and covered some of the tasks that needed to be done, particularly filing with the U.S. Office of Inspector General at the U.S. Treasury. We did all of that for our towns because a town like East Bridgewater doesn't have the staff to do all of that. And so we took those resources on for our 27 communities. Your team here at East Bridgewater has done a fantastic job. The folks in the Selectman's office and the different department heads, your previous town administrators and your current town administrator have been great about getting money. And so through the Plymouth County CARES program, I had the exact number. Bridgewater received $2,177,959.06. Again, twice as much as like-sized communities received. And I know that you guys put that to good use and needed that. You also got some monies through a firefighters grant. You got some money through an election security grant. So Bridgewater did a very good job of getting federal funds through the team that you have here in the town, and they deserve compliments as well. Some towns were very good at accessing not just our program but others. East Bridgewater was certainly one of the best, and it's been a pleasure to deal with them. We're here to talk about ARPA now. It's a new program, the American Rescue Plan Act, as Commissioner Valenzola mentioned. Plymouth County will be receiving a little more than $100 million to administer on behalf of our sub-recipients, which the commissioners have identified as our 27 communities. And so far have released, so just so you know, and I think this is true of your own monies that you receive directly, we only received half of the money so far. We've applied for the second tranche that has not been made available. There are some folks up on Capitol Hill that are fighting against the release of the second tranche. We don't think that will be successful. We do believe it will be released. We're hoping to get that in the next couple of weeks. But we and the commissioners released 25% of the total monies, and that made East Bridgewater immediately eligible for $684,215.01 under the Plymouth County CARES program. I will tell you, the commissioners are anxious to do more. At their next meeting, I'm going to make a presentation to them to release an additional phase of monies, which will be even more money available to the town of East Bridgewater. Let's talk about ARPA. The way we look at it is...
John, can I interrupt for a
Oh,
second?
of course, please.
That's a lot of numbers and dates and things like
Yeah,
that.
we go
Can-
very quickly.
Some, I mean, not right, maybe not right now, but can we get some of that, like, on a document? That we
So the
kinda-
best thing we can tell you is if you go to www.plymouthcountyarpa.com, all of this information is there.
Okay,
I can try to pull together some just basic numbers and dates and stuff too.
okay.
Get it out.
So I talked originally about the CARES. If you go to www.plymouthcountycares.com, you can get all that information there. You can click on municipal allotments. You can see East Bridgewater. So all those numbers I gave you are from our website. So that should make it a little bit easier. And by the way, and I have to give Commissioner Valenzuela's predecessor, Commissioner Pilata, some credit because our website was the first one up, and again has received national recognition for its transparency. We account for every single penny to the penny, and it's really been a good resource. So thank you for that because it's a good place to look for this information.
In the state, follow Plymouth County's lead, and you can check the state disbursements at mass.gov/ I can't remember it because it's a very long link. And we kept it simple with both websites on purpose for full transparency.
So thank you for the question, and that's where the information will be. Back to ARPA, and again, you want to go to our website because ARPA is, if you, does anybody here suffer from insomnia? If you do, print out the full 686-page American Rescue Plan Act, because by page 11, you'll be sound asleep. I've now read it 6 times in its entirety. I think I understand 85% of it now. I've been deemed an expert in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts because I've read it so much, and I feel like I have a fairly good grasp on it. Let me just tell you how confusing federal legislation often can be. They came out with an interim final rule to interpret that legislation that we were all supposed to follow. I tease because I love that phrase, interim final rule. That's how I want to file my taxes next year. These are my interim final taxes to the IRS. They then came out with the final rule on January 6th, almost 9 months later after having passed this legislation, which changed a number of things from the interim final rule. So just so you know, we're still at the early stages of this legislation. This committee is in the right place at the right time to have this conversation. People are still figuring it all out. Here's the way I like to think of it. There are essentially 6 categories of funding available through ARPA, a couple of which we are pointing out to our subrecipients, like East Bridgewater, are not the best categories to pursue for reasons we can discuss. The 2 categories we like to highlight are 1, infrastructure for wastewater and water. I will tell you that of our 27 communities in Plymouth County, at least half, if not more, will be using all of their ARPA funds for wastewater and water projects for a number of reasons. 1, it's clearly eligible. 2, a lot of them have projects that are very significant, and these monies are a good supplement to that, freeing up assets for other projects because it's clearly defined as water and wastewater. For instance, one of our communities who will ultimately be eligible for over $2 million is using it all on one water project. As an example, our first eligible recipient was the town of Middleborough. They received $275,000 to upgrade their well treatment facilities around town. Commissioner Valenzuela and I were there to present that check. And Plymouth was the second recipient. They received $2.25 million to upgrade their wastewater treatment facility at the Plymouth Airport. So that is the number 1 category we see communities utilizing and encourage people to utilize. Number 2 is broadband infrastructure. Again, that's a little bit harder because here in Massachusetts, we tend to have a little bit more of a solid broadband infrastructure. I don't see many communities applying there, but again, that's clean-cut broadband infrastructure. Another category is in response to the public health crisis of the pandemic. And the way I look at that is it's kind of a continuation of the CARES program. So if a community still has things that they're doing for the response to the public health pandemic, that is where you would apply under, that's the category you would apply under through our program. And if there are some things that didn't get covered under CARES, that's eligible under ARPA. And so that is a place to consider. The 4th category is in response to public safety with a focus on public health. And you folks have actually already submitted a draft application, which we can chat about in a little bit. But that is, things like public emergencies. I have one town that's contemplating upgrading their emergency response center, where if there's a hurricane or a tornado or a weather event, I guess more like a nor'easter here or a blizzard, and they need to have a warming station or places for their townspeople to go. One town had a decrepit facility and are upgrading that facility. Clearly eligible under this public safety, and they're applying through our program to do that. The last 2 categories are tricky. They may generate questions. But one is hazard duty pay, and a number of communities immediately looked at that. But we remind them that there is an income qualification for that. The intent of that is to pay lower paid employees first. So not surprisingly, I think as that category was made known to the general public, there were a number of public employees, particularly public safety employees, who were looking to that as a way to get some additional pay. However, many of them tended not to fit into the eligibility category for their salaries. Now, they're not exempt from getting those monies, but you have to take care of the lower paid employees first. So you have to take care of your custodians, your cafeteria workers, those people that were, in fact, on the front lines and dealing with the pandemic. So if you're going to do something, you have to take care of those people first before you get to others. So I don't know of anybody that's going to apply through us for hazard duty pay. And I would think that if that's something a community wanted to do, they should use their own portion of ARPA to do that. The last category is revenue replacement. And this is tricky as well, because under the first rule, and I mentioned they had the interim final rule, there was a formula that you needed to review and process to determine if you actually lost revenue. Not surprisingly, many of our communities actually didn't lose revenue during the pandemic, and by this calculation wouldn't have been eligible for revenue replacement. Under the new rule that came out on January 6th, they allowed for a flat number that you could just say was revenue replacement and that you could apply to general government services. Downside to that is twofold. One, you don't want to plug it into your operating budget because it's one-time revenue. Two, it comes with some strict reporting requirements that you're going to have to report every quarter what you've spent that money on for the remainder of the ARPA program, which runs until December 31st, 2024. So if for some reason you were to choose to use revenue replacement as a category, spend it on a one-time project in your FY23 budget, you still have to report that each quarter for the next 2 years. And so we're certainly not recommending that as a category. In fact, because there's some dispute at the federal level about that category, it's not one you can apply to through us yet on our website. We only have the first 5 categories. But I did want to make everyone aware that that is a category. Lastly, I just wanted to talk about the fact that you folks know you've received some money directly under ARPA as well. It's called the Non-Entitlement Unit Money, NEU. So when I reference that, that's money that you folks are eligible for directly from the federal government. And I believe that you've already submitted for your first half of that money, which should have been about $760,208. And I know Charlie would know if you got that money. I believe that you probably have, and you've probably submitted for your second tranche of money. That money I don't know has been available, but East Bridgewater would be eligible for about $1.5 million of your own money under the ARPA program. Understand those categories I talked about are the same categories you have to follow to spend your own money. So think of it this way. You have your own money of about 1.5. You have Plymouth County money that right now is 684 and will become more as the commissioners release more money. Many communities are spending their money first and then applying to the county for bigger projects. And that's what we're seeing happen. You don't have to do it that way, but communities are dealing with their front-end issues through their own money and then applying to us for bigger projects like the Plymouth Airport wastewater treatment facility, like the Middleborough plants, like some water mains that towns are looking to fix and the like. I had a chance to do a little research, and you do have a lot of projects here in East Bridgewater, and kudos to all of you. You're doing a water main replacement. You're doing an affordable housing project. That is one of the components under the program that you can submit for. Investing in capital expenditures under the public safety that's presumed eligible by the Treasury. And you guys have a big sewer district program going, the New Bedford Street Sewer District. So some of these things are projects that would be eligible under ARPA. You may have other thoughts and plans, but those are 3 that we were able to just find very quickly that would be eligible and something that you might want to consider applying to Plymouth County for through the ARPA resources. The long and the short of it is we've set up what we think is a pretty good system. We have our website. The town needs to apply through that website. The selectmen needed to have designated an official certifier, and I believe that is the town manager, Charlie Seelig, and then you had to designate an official filer. Is that
Between myself and Melanie, we've been.
excellent? So they're official. They have a code to get into the website and to fill out the application. We have 3 levels of review, and this is really for your own protection. The first review is Clifton Larson Allen. They're the accounting firm that we've hired to do the review to make sure that you've met all of the qualifications, because we don't want to be the only ones to be the ones that say no sometimes. The second level of review is Powers and Sullivan, another accounting firm you may be familiar with. They do a lot of work for many of the communities. And people say, well, Tom, isn't that really a belt and suspenders approach? And I say, yes, it is. Because if there's a problem with this, it's not the Department of Revenue that comes down or some friendly people that come and visit you from Washington, D.C. It's usually the gentleman with those nice blue windbreakers with the bold gold letters FBI on their back that come and wonder what you did with these resources. So we really want to make sure that everybody is following the rules and that once the money goes out, it stays out and is used for the resources that ARPA envisioned. The last level of review is my office. I have a team of folks that will be looking at it, again, to make sure every I is dotted, every T is crossed, and that it meets all the requirements of the ARPA program. And then we present it to the commissioners. They'll ask a couple of questions along the way, and it doesn't get done unless they sign off on it, because they are ultimately the final authority under ARPA. I'm the administrator, but they're the check and balance to make sure we've done our homework. So we have a very sophisticated, robust program set up. We believe that it will serve you very well. It's serving our communities well under the CARES program. That was kind of our model. And it's a resource for you. I did want to mention that Clifton Larson Allen is available if you have questions. I don't know if Melanie's had to call in and chat with them at all about
I've
the...
talked to Eric through your office.
Okay.
But I didn't talk to CLA. no.
Okay. So those resources are available to you if you have questions. Of course, we're available to you. Commissioner Valenzola makes sure I'm available 24/7. He said, Tom, if East Bridgewater calls at 1 a.m., I expect you to answer that call. I assured him I would. I may be a little groggy, but you'll get me. But we do want to be available, because one of the advantages of us having this resource and being here for you is we're local. If you have a question, you can call us. You've got our cards. It's not managed by the state. It's not managed by the feds. It's managed by people that you know and can see, and we'll come to a meeting in the middle of July to answer whatever questions you guys have about a program. And that's really the connection that we bring from Plymouth County to East Bridgewater and to each of our communities. We've done a few of these, so we really appreciate the invitation. You guys are smart to be doing this. You're doing it the right way. You're right at the right point. We want to make sure we're here to answer any questions that you have. That was just a quick, and I know I talk very quickly, and that's a quick overview and covered a lot of territory. But I want to give you a flavor of a couple things. Resources are available. They are designated categories that you need to apply for, and we're here to be a resource to help you through that process. Was there anything else you wanted to add?
There were 2 quick things, Treasurer. See, but this is pretty good. We'll sometimes he'll pick up on things I may have missed, and then I'll pick up on things. So the last 2 quick things on those resources, I think the one thing to note as well, when Plymouth County did CARES, we were the only county in the Commonwealth that was eligible that did it. There was a handful of other counties that were eligible. They handed their money over to the Commonwealth. When ARPA came along, every eligible county banded together. So those costs that you've heard, CLA and Power Sullivan, are being shared by not only Plymouth, but Bristol, Norfolk, and Barnstable counties. Dukes County tried to get in. Our bandwidth was too full to let Martha's Vineyard in. But I think it's important to note that the cost that we just mentioned is now being shared with the other counties. And then the last thing I'll add, as with CARES, same has been with ARPA. Representative Sullivan, Senator Mike Brady, Senator Walter Timmelty have been staunch advocates for East Bridgewater. I can tell you at the tail end of the CARES Act, Rep. Sullivan was calling me or texting me multiple times, as I know Senator Brady was, and Senator Timmelty was, with Treasurer O'Brien's office, and we chatted, we cross-pollinated those conversations as well. So you have a fantastic state representation that has also found the value, as Treasurer O'Brien just alluded to us being local, to us administering this program. They've been staunch advocates for you folks, as has Congressman Lynch. He's been very supportive of this program on the local level, but obviously coming from the federal government, and of course our U.S. Senators Markey and Warren. But I just wanted to make sure you folks were aware just how much advocacy your legislative, especially the local ones, did and continue to do.
Excellent points. And that's it.
That's
For
a
now.
lot. And,
So we did that in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
you know, from my perspective, the next question I have is, are any of the other towns around here, the similar towns within Plymouth County to us, our size and our revenue and things like that, very far down the road? Has anyone taken those first few steps?
Of your size, no. I think you're right where everybody else is.
Okay.
They're doing the same things you are. They're having planning meetings. They're saying, how do we best maximize these resources? They're trying to figure out their own NEU money. How are we going to use that? And then what are we going to apply to the county for? You know, Middleborough's bigger than you folks are land-wise. They're through the first round. Plymouth, obviously bigger, tends to be the bigger ones because they had shovel-ready projects and they needed the cash right away. So the short answer is you're right where everybody else your size is. The program runs until 2024, so we have some time to make sure we're doing the right things. I wouldn't spend too much time planning. I think the work of this committee should be done over the next month or so, so that you can make the recommendations you're slated to make and move along and get applications in.
Thank you.
As he mentioned, we do have an application in right now with Plymouth County for the ambulance that was approved by the selectmen months ago at this point. So that's about $312,000. And I think we've given them everything at this point. They were waiting on one thing from us, but we sent that 2 weeks ago maybe. And we'll be submitting for, the board had also approved $350,000 to be used towards planning for the North Bedford Street Sewer District. And we're gonna be submitting for that from Plymouth County as well.
Yeah, as the treasurer said, it's a 3-year program, and one of the things we pointed out during our CARES presentations when this was coming down the pipe was, CARES was kind of funny, right? It was March of 2020 with the deadline of December 30th, 2020, so everybody had a mad dash in December, and they said, never mind, we'll make it December 31st, 2021. So I know in conversations I have when I'm out and about, as we're making Tom slave away in Plymouth, the commissioners, myself and my colleagues are out talking to the other communities, running off the top of my head, communities like size to East Bridgewater. My hometown of Rockland's pretty similar size. Pembroke, I think, is a pretty similar size. And I would echo the treasurer's sentiment. Everybody, you folks are where you should be now. Not hurrying to spend it, not trying to do something too hasty because it's going to go away in 6 months. Thankfully, we have 3 years with this program, or 2.5 years now left. So, I think East Bridgewater as a community is in a good position right now.
Just one aside before, I'll just open up. I think we should get the money and spend it as quickly as we can. With inflation going, we'll get more for our buck if we spend it now.
Or inflation could come down, and you could end up paying less for some of these things too. Yeah, it's you know, it's certainly a matter of I think as Tom has said, is really identifying what you think the highest and best use of these funds are going to be within the next couple of months, and you know, when you pull the trigger, it'll be the right time to be doing that ultimately.
And just, anybody else have any questions or comments that they'd like
Yeah,
to?
I'm a little confused by all the numbers and programs and what's been applied for and accepted or agreed to, and what we're doing, where we fit in, because as I see it, there was a lump sum. Part of it comes from the county, part of it comes to us to distribute, and then more comes later to distribute. Now, and then we have these $350,000 and $312,000. Where do all these fit in? And you know, and I think it goes back to what you asked John earlier. You know, just to delineate where the monies are, in what's already being applied for or allocated.
Yeah, and I'm sorry for that confusion. I spent a lot of time talking about CARES and then threw out a lot of numbers. Let's just talk about ARPA. American Rescue Plan Act sent out 2 buckets of money. One bucket came directly to the communities. That's called your NEU money, your non-entitlement unit money. For East Bridgewater, that number should, if they release all the money, total $1,520,415. But the federal government, in its infinite wisdom, only allowed you to apply for half to start. And so East Bridgewater's half would be $760,208.
Which we did receive.
Applied for and received.
Yeah.
Have you applied for the second tranche?
We applied.
And you have not yet received it?
Not yet.
And that's to be expected.
So that's what we're looking for. I mean, that's what's allocated to East Bridgewater.
Directly from the federal government through the American Rescue Plan Act for East Bridgewater. Okay?
Plymouth County has nothing to do with
We have
those
nothing to do
funds.
with that. The only thing that matters is the categories are the same for our program. So you have to follow the same rules. And many towns are using our website as a helpful guide to how they spend their money.
Okay.
Now, Plymouth County received $100 million. And we're going to apportion that out to our 27 communities. However, we've only received half of that. And it's unclear whether we're going to receive the second half. We think we will, we hope we will, but we haven't. So I can't advise the commissioners to release all that money yet. That would be imprudent. So they said, well, we got to get some money out the door. So they already authorized 25% of the total amount, so approximately 25 million, and spread it out amongst the 27 communities by population. That allocation for East Bridgewater was $684,215.01. There will be future allocations coming down the pike, depending on when and if we get the federal money. I'm going to put a proposal in front of the commissioners next meeting to release another 25%. I think that proposal will be well received,
I believe it will be.
but I
yes.
do not speak for the commissioners.
And I can't speak for my colleagues.
If they do receive and approve that, that will double the 684,215.01, giving you a little more than 1.3 million. Okay? To apply for our money, you have to go through our portal. You have designated people that can apply. And you have to follow the rules and guidelines, and then we cut a check to East Bridgewater. So far, you've applied for one thing, the ambulance. And that application was for $312,524. That is at level 1 review with Clifton Larson Allen. As was mentioned, we were waiting for some things, but I guess you guys sent that along. I don't see that until it gets to me, because I don't want to interfere with the process. So that is under review right now. What they review it for is eligibility, category appropriateness, and whether all of the documentation that we need to give the U.S. Treasury is there. And so there may be questions back and say, hey, we need this additional document, or this one doesn't have the right date on it, or whatever. So there's some back and forth. Once Clifton Larson Allen approves that, it goes to Powers and Sullivan. They'll do a similar review. Then it comes to me. I do a review. I may say, oh, and in fact, I do catch things at the third level. We didn't have this, or I noticed this signature is missing, or this date doesn't jive with it, and we get that corrected. Once I'm done, I present it to the commissioners. They would get something that said, okay, East Bridgewater ambulance, here's the number. They vote, we write a check, and we come and deliver that check to the town of East Bridgewater.
And that was ARPA funds, and it's already been applied for, right?
Yes.
Right.
What
Because the
was
big,
that applied for?
We completed the last piece of the application not long ago, 2 weeks ago, maybe?
the biggest thing to keep in mind with the previous program, there were multiple communities outside
They
of
did
Plymouth
on the
County
ambulance.
that received money from the Commonwealth. They also
Probably
received the
gonna
guidebook
do the
on
same.
how to make sure it was eligible. Then when the state got around to figuring out whether it was or it wasn't, they would claw that money back. I believe it was the town of Malden had to give back close to $1 million because it turned out it was ineligible. So the biggest success, and of course, the treasurer and I somehow both left this out of our presentations, one of the biggest success of all for the CARES Act was on a single penny had to be clawed back by Plymouth County. That is the same level of sophistication, review, and insurance we want to provide to the communities through ARPA. And we can foresee, and I think the treasurer shares salient news articles with us when we meet as commissioners. I don't think it's happened in Massachusetts yet, but certainly nationwide.
It did happen in
It has happened in Massachusetts already, that there have been ARPA funds that have been spent, again, by communities outside of now the participating counties, that were ineligible, incorrectly spent. The I's weren't dotted, the T's weren't crossed, and that money's getting clawed back. So the review is, it might sound long, it might sound a little wonky and onerous. That is so when we're handing you that check, though, that's going in the town's bank account. It's done, it's dusted, and we're not gonna come and knocking, or as the treasurer likes to say, the friendly guys in sunglasses aren't gonna show up wanting that money back.
Just stepping back, structural question. So CLA and Powers and Sullivan, are they lawyers, accountants, auditors?
So they're both auditing firms.
Auditing firms, okay. Thank you.
We have also retained, it's amazing, we skipped a few, we retained the services
We're a
of
little out of practice, you know, we're in summer mode.
Yeah. We retain the services of Mintz Levin as our legal counsel for our administration of the ARPA program.
Yep.
And as Jared mentioned, I was very glad you did this. When we did CARES, we were the only ones doing it. Other counties saw our success and wanted to follow suit with ARPA. In fact, if you go to their ARPA pages, they look a lot like ours, design, but we were able to split the cost. So we've elevated, ARPA is a lot more complicated than CARES, and that sounds interesting, but it's true. So we upgraded with Clifton Larson Allen as a major firm, and Powers and Sullivan, and Mintz Levin is our legal firm. So the documents that you see on our website that we're asking all of the towns to sign, they were drafted and created by Mintz Levin. So we have that backup. We know we're doing this right. I can tell you, I have confidence that Plymouth County is administering the ARPA program better than 95% of the other counties around the country. No doubt in my mind.
So in the back of my, and I apologize if I'm monopolizing things here, but the back of my mind, you know, I've always thought, always, the last 7 or 8 weeks or since this started, that we'd be bringing our town council into that. Is there any reason why we would not want to do that, or?
You certainly don't need to for the application through the county, because we have enough review. You do have your own monies, and if you feel compelled to do that, you can. I think you have enough resources at your disposal, though, that you might not. I never advise anybody to not consult with counsel if they have a legal question, but a lot of these questions aren't legal. They're audit, they're accounting, they're administrative. We can answer those for you and help you along the way, so you may not need to incur the cost. I would say if you weren't getting your own direct money, you definitely wouldn't need to call counsel, because we have counsel on staff. We're footing that bill. Why would you guys pay for that advice? Because we're already getting it. But if on your own money you feel some compunction or need, I would never say no. I just don't know that there's a real legal question. There may be a project that you guys want to fund, and you say, is this eligible? You may then need some counsel to do that, but other than that, I don't think you'd need counsel.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I have a couple questions. When you had referenced the revenue replacement category, and you talked about the onerous quarterly reporting, the reporting goes through 2024 or 2026?
I apologize. The reporting there goes through 2024.
2024, okay. I just want to make sure I
No,
had the
because
right
we're
date.
gonna, if we're spending the money, we're probably gonna have to continue to report until 2026. The authorization ends in 24, in the sense of we will have to authorize spending the money by the end of 24. But I suspect because we'll be spending the money possibly in 25 and 26, we'll have to continue the reporting through the entire period.
Okay.
So that is true. It depends on when you spend the money.
When you spend the money. Okay, so I'll just change it to 6. My second question was, I thought there was a component for organizations within town to come to us who were adversely affected by the pandemic and request funding.
So that is a program you could set up with your NEU money,
Okay.
but that is not a program you could run through Plymouth County.
Okay.
Even, so it doesn't, the category of the affected communities by the pandemic, the county considers that not to be an eligible expense.
For purposes of having your own sub-recipients within your town. So if you had nonprofits
Yes,
that you wanted to help directly,
or businesses,
yeah, not through us,
okay.
for reporting and auditing reasons.
Okay.
Because you would then have to report every dollar for 4 years and monitor it, and that becomes too risky for you and for the county. If you decide to do that on your own, go for it, and that's when you might need legal counsel.
So that falls under the revenue replacement category?
Nope, that would fall under response to the pandemic.
Response to the pandemic, okay. And then my last question was, when you talked about the 100 million, let's say Plymouth County gets the full 100 million. Funds have to be spent by 2024. You've allocated based on population. June of 2024 comes around and there's 25 million that some towns just don't have their act together. is there a plan to open that up to other communities?
Yes.
Okay,
And I can tell you, we did that under CARES.
okay,
I can tell you that East Bridgewater's original allocation was less than what you received because some of our communities didn't spend all of the CARES money.
okay.
We have a very sophisticated Plan B, C, and D in place. But we would actually probably begin to look at that in early 2024. We wouldn't wait until June of 2024. We'll have a very good sense of where our communities are. We're in constant conversation. Charlie calls me every week, so, you know, and I hope he feels he gets good response from the county. So, you know, we'll really be able to tell. I think most of our towns are gonna do major infrastructure projects, and it's not gonna be an issue. Unlike CARES, you know, they're gonna do projects that cost 2 or 3 or 4 times more than they're eligible to receive. So our money is really just defraying the cost. And there's a huge value in doing that. One, it's easier reporting, it's easier monitoring, and if it's for wastewater or sewer, it's clearly, or water and sewer, it's clearly eligible. So you check off all the boxes.
Right, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, as it relates to that, we gave the treasurer this dictate with CARES, and it's the same one with ARPA. Not a single penny will go back to the federal government. And you know, we got creative towards the end of CARES. I mean, $2.5 million were spent on tests for every community in Plymouth County. So that was at the tail end again when we were really cobbling together more submissions, you know, from our communities. That opportunity presented itself to buy en masse, and that resulted in test kits going out at the end of the year, as you folks may recall. So I can assure you that the last thing I want to do is see a single penny go back to the federal treasury. So once we get to that point, certainly we'll have those conversations with you folks and the other communities.
This question may not be posed to you two, but it might be posed to the town administrator, Cecilia, is that I wasn't aware that we had applied for the ambulance. So as a committee, do we know what projects you guys are applying for funding, so that way we can have a preview beforehand, so
Yeah,
not like
and
deer in
this
the
happened
headlights?
before the formation of the committee. So what happened, I think the fire chief was presented with an opportunity for an ambulance basically at that moment. Right now, I think they're waiting, if you place an order for an ambulance, you're like 18 months out. But there was one that a community had bought, no longer was gonna take, and the opportunity was there. So he went to the selectmen prior to the formation of the committee, and they decided to allow that. But I don't think the intention is to bring many projects
No.
outside of the committee at this point.
I mean, there are three sorry.
Sorry. yes.
So there are three areas right now. So as
Thank you.
mentioned was the ambulance, which qualifies inside the prevention of COVID standard. That's why we've applied to Plymouth for the money rather than relying on our own money for that. The second is the North Bedford Street Sewer District, where we've set aside money for the engineering costs. This was before we went out and got the $11 million bond authorization, but we needed to do preliminary engineering to get to the point of going to town meeting in May, and that the board approved that back. It was even before you and I were here, I think.
That was right when I started,
Yeah,
maybe.
so let's say the fall of '21. Again, as was mentioned, that fills one of the categories in the sense of the broadband water sewer infrastructure. That was for $350. Again, I think Melly's working on the application to send to Plymouth, because it's another one of the categories that would qualify. And the NEU money, we'll have a broader area that we'll be able to, a bigger sandbox in essence, to play with. Not as much money, but we can put more things in it that Plymouth County might not find eligible.
And that's where we come in, right?
Yes, exactly. So for the committee, and there's a third, it's the police chief needed to get a guarantee from the board of selectmen that money would be available for the body cameras for a number of years, because there's going to be a multi-year contract. It doesn't qualify under anything except the reduced revenue. However, by the board's vote, and they were very specific about this, in essence, they're encumbering the money, so to speak. The expectation is, in fact, that the town will vote the body camera money every year in future years out of the regular budget, and the board will then say, fine, we're going to rescind the vote that we had to set aside the money for that, and that money will be freed up for something else instead. I don't, at this point, expect the board to be doing anything more in terms of on its own, because they make the final decisions. They are going to strongly welcome the recommendations from the advisory committee, but ultimately, under the federal laws and everything, the board makes the decisions, not town meeting, not me, not the finance committee, the board does. Obviously, if we're going to Plymouth County for any of the money, Plymouth County has to sign off on it. And what we would want to do in general, unless we really, really know that it's gonna qualify, like the ambulance, like the sewer district money, or we presume, let's put it that way, since we didn't go to you first before asking. But the process is, we can go to Plymouth County before we spend the money and find out, is this an eligible project? And if we're told no, then we can say, eventually, you know, let's say you recommend something, let's say, even before you recommend something, we can work with Plymouth County and say, which of these grant applications that we received will fit in within the criteria for Plymouth County, which might instead rely on the NEU money, because all those categories, and the one we mentioned where Plymouth County is not going to fund that area of assistance to communities that were hurt more in the pandemic, is the reduced revenue, which is pretty much an anything goes. We can't pay for retirement, we can't pay debt, and there are a couple other things we can't pay for. But if I wanted to buy a pencil with that money, I'm not saying we should, we could do that. It's not a suggested thing, it has no long-term impact, but legally, it's an anything goes category for the reduced revenue. We're not gonna be able to do that with Plymouth County. They're not gonna, that category is gonna remain only with the NEU money. So that's why those two projects, we're going to try and get the Plymouth County money, so that will keep intact our NEU money to be used for other things.
And I will say that's a good strategy, right? Because we're a bigger operation, and so the two projects that Charlie is talking about, I can't say definitively will be approved, but they're exactly what we're looking for. You know, they fit the bill.
So another question to piggyback on that is, living here, I think broadband is something that East Bridgewater could definitely look into. So are we, as a committee, preview to those towns that submit those applications to see if they were approved for that, or?
So you can't see other towns' applications. I can tell you we don't have a broadband submission yet.
Okay,
Any of you can call our office at any time, and I can give you that information.
okay.
And so I don't know what East Bridgewater's broadband needs would be. I did have an inquiry from one of our larger towns. They wanted to buy hotspots, and that's something that I'm probably too old to fully appreciate, so
Right.
I had to ask Jared what a hotspot was.
Yeah, I can help you with that, Charlie.
Yeah, it was completely different than what I thought it might be. And so, yeah, that might be something that this town could consider. They're gonna probably do it under their NEU money as opposed to our money, because they found that there was a water main break that they had to fix, and that's gonna cost them $11 million, so they're gonna apply for our $3 million to do that instead. But, yeah, broadband is out there. It's amazing to me to think that there are parts of the country that don't even have internet access. And so while ours may sometimes be slow, most of our residents at least have it. I think that was for sectors of this country that don't even have it, so they could run cable, run wire, do all that kind of stuff.
The rule from the federal government about the broadband was basically, and I can be corrected easily on this, is that if there is the ability to get broadband at a certain speed and above that, then you're not gonna be broadband eligible. Now, whether you wanna spend money on those people who, because of their finances, can't access broadband, that might be a grayish area, in the sense of, I'm not quite sure it would fit within the broadband infrastructure or not. It could be in the reduced revenue, but that's probably gonna be a continuing cost, in the sense of it's gonna be an operating cost, in that, I think we're Comcast, if I remember right. If we wanted to say, fine, we'll get you an inexpensive subscription for Comcast, for broadband from them, well, okay, what do we do after 2026? Are we gonna continue to subsidize that? So if we've got an application for something like that, we'd have to think ahead and say, what do we, maybe we can do it for several years, but after that, are we just doing it in the operating budget or something like that? Doesn't mean we can't, just questions to think about, because, in fact, for all these projects, if there's going to be an operating budget impact, how are we going to fund those operating costs, whether they're during the life of ARPA or after 2026?
Well, I know we only have the option of Comcast, so I don't know if to look into giving people the choices of Verizon with Fios. So that's one of the biggest complaints that I hear from the constituents here, is that they have no other resources or other avenue to compare, and Comcast is it. So
Yeah.
that's where that comes from.
So the only thing I can tell you that one town is struggling with, believe it or not, it's a coastal community. They have one neighborhood that doesn't have either Comcast or Verizon. And so they're debating using some of these monies to run cable down that street. So those 12, 14 homes
Can have.
could have it. They're struggling with it though, because the rest of the town is saying, well, why should we be responsible for this one street? Why are we picking up the tab for these people? They could collaborate and, pay for their cable to come down the street. So I don't know what's gonna happen. I doubt they're gonna apply to us. But if you wanted to, I just imagine that might be very expensive. I don't know.
Right.
To do that, but that would be something that would be eligible.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
One other thought, listening to that discussion is, so as we come up with ideas, right, to me, it would make sense if before we went too far down the road, this is our strategy, this is what we think we might be doing. Jared and Tom, what do you think? Is this gonna be approved or not approved? You could say either, oh yeah, that's gonna be approved, or no way that's gonna be approved, or, could stand somewhere in the middle, but it would help us to kind of sift through things that are not gonna be able to be done, and just say, okay, we're not gonna focus on that, we're gonna focus on these things that can be done, and then think about the ones that are stuck in the middle.
We are certainly happy to do that, and would welcome the chance to do that. I will tell you that when we say no, we're absolutely definitive. So we're very helpful on the no side. If you've got a project that we're gonna say, no, it doesn't. Now, on the yes side, because I'm the final authority, I can only say, it looks good. You guys have to determine the ultimate need, that it is a community needed, and that it is ARPA eligible. You have to make that first application. So we can't give you an approval and say, yes, this is definitely going through. We can say, it looks good. Yeah, I wouldn't waste time submitting this. You go ahead and do it. But what I have found to be very helpful is some of the projects that people submit to us that they could have saved a lot of time and effort, because we could have said, I don't know what you're thinking. This is clearly not eligible.
But that's the guidance I'm looking for. I'd rather, take
And we're
a
happy to
shotgun
do
and
that.
shoot stuff to you guys, and if, 90% of it is no, then
Yeah,
frees up a lot of time to work on the important stuff.
yeah.
Can you share any of those with us that? people-
things that are no?
requests, Yeah, that have come across your plate so
Yeah.
far, to stay away from?
Sure. I mean, we talked a little bit about premium pay. One community wanted to give their police union premium pay, and we said they could, but they had to pay all of their lower level staff. And so that became prohibitively expensive. So they decided not to do that. We said, no, you can't just pick one higher paid group of people and give them premium pay. Let me think some of the others that we've had to say no to. Somebody wanted to buy a building, a community wanted to buy a building, and they were gonna refurbish it for recreation. And the argument was that it would help keep people outdoors. We didn't feel that that was a compelling enough argument. We also felt that they were trying to skirt the ARPA rules to fix a building that they hadn't fixed for 20 years. And so we're trying to rehab a town asset without really following the spirit of ARPA. So we kind of told them to not do that. What else have we rejected?
I've heard a couple of requests for playgrounds. That's
Yep.
very much so. And to dovetail the treasurer's comment with the maintenance, and he'll correct me if I'm wrong in this point, but you can't have a building, as he just said, that's sort of sat there that you think, well, that might actually now be useful, and we now have this ARPA money. There still has to be some COVID or pandemic reason. A building that may have sat vacant or has fallen into disrepair because of deferred maintenance or whatever plausible reason, it's not going to be eligible. The federal government is going to wonder why you didn't bother to use money to maintain that asset before getting these funds. So, you know, if you see a building, if East Bridgewater has a building in town that they might think, hey, we might be able to use some ARPA money to fix this up or do whatever, no, that's probably gonna be a Hail Mary shot that is likely not gonna land.
So, you know, the other thing you can do is just do a quick Google about what's been denied from the federal government. I can tell you a few of those. Jared mentioned that he didn't think anything from the state had caused problems, but the state spent money on the Edward Kennedy
Right.
Memorial Library, and the U.S. Treasury is questioning that as an appropriate expense. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. There was a big city that spent money on a stadium, and they're saying no, that was not eligible. We've seen the purchase of vehicles for department heads determined to not be eligible. So things like that on a bigger scale, I don't imagine East Bridgewater would even have contemplated something like that. But it gives you a flavor. No playgrounds, no personal vehicles. You know, now
Ballparks.
right. Commissioner Valenzola was talking about rehabbing a building. We do have one town that has an emergency operations center that has fallen into disrepair. And that is the place where they, if there's a storm, they send their people to go. That is clearly eligible. They say, you know, we want to upgrade this so it can have 20 more cots for people. Yeah, that's in response to a crisis in public, so that fits public safety and public health. So, you know, you can't definitively just say, no, you can't do
Right.
X, because every situation is different. And that's why we don't put up what other towns are doing, because just because even a neighboring town is doing something, doesn't mean it would qualify here.
Right.
Or just because something didn't qualify there, doesn't mean it wouldn't here. Every
Just to give
town
an
is
idea,
different.
though, just to have an idea.
Yeah.
Just my general.
Well, the
sense.
best thing is to go to our website. We put up some examples. You
Yes.
can click on each of the links that we have. It kind of lists projects that you'd want to look at.
Yes.
You know, we feel it's a good initial
Yeah.
resource.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to some degree, it's why at the top, and even in the conversations we've had, over the last 9 months to a year, it's why we do sort of drive home water sewer infrastructure in a lot of ways, because that's, as Tom said at the top, and we've been saying throughout, that does check a lot of big boxes for so many communities that we know would be eligible once you start getting into the weeds. And I know the same was with CARES, and Tom will correct me if I'm wrong on this point, but again, when we say that it might be eligible in one community and not another, why not? Well, if you've been planning on doing this, or this has been in a capital plan for several years, the federal government's gonna raise eyebrows at that, right? Because you've been thinking about this before COVID-19 existed, and for one reason or another, maybe it hasn't been executed, or maybe it's not funded the way you want it to be. You can't use, and I see a little nodding, so I might be driving a little bit at it,
Well,
but.
so that was definitely the rule under CARES.
Right.
ARPA is a little
Little
bit more
different,
flexible
right.
on that if you can tie it into the public health emergency.
Right.
So everybody's going to be different.
So the question that brings me, so at what level do they really go start looking for previous capital plans and things like that to?
Yeah, so that will happen when you submit to us. You know, we'll ask some
Automatically?
questions. Was this something you already had on your capital plan? You know, if so, why do you think it's eligible now? You know, we'll ask all those questions. We have a fairly detailed application, and we'll follow up. Under ARPA, so Commissioner Valenzola is absolutely correct under CARES. If it had been on a plan at all, you could do it. Under ARPA, if you could tie it in and say, well, so let's get back to that community that's doing its emergency operations center. They'd had that on the plan for a while. It wasn't eligible under CARES, but it is eligible under ARPA because it's tied in directly to public safety and public health. So ARPA's a little more flexible than CARES was.
So on the website somewhere, there's the list of the questions you're gonna ask to determine, you know, this is what the ruler is for these things to go forward. And that those questions are there somewhere?
Nope. So on our website, there's a list of each of the categories, and it gives you some highlights of what might be eligible. If you have questions, though, call us.
Yeah.
Because what we found is there are very few questions that are similar from every town. And we even found ourselves getting into trouble under CARES, answering a generic question as best we could, and 2 towns came up with exceptions that were eligible. So we really try and take a town-by-town approach.
Anybody else? Dan?
No?
Melanie, anything else? Ken? Gigi?
I will say their website is definitely a good tool and it's user-friendly. It has a lot of information on there, so good spot to check out.
And Jared and I handed out our cards, so.
I would need, if I came in a little bit after.
Yeah, please don't hesitate to call. I get calls from boards and selectmen regularly, and we want to make sure that, we give you whatever answers we can as quickly as possible. And if you want us to come back, we welcome that chance. I think it'll be Jared's turn next time to take me out to dinner.
Yes.
I know. But yeah, you're in the right spot, you're doing the right thing. I think the strategy of, hey, let's brainstorm for 1 or 2 meetings, not too many more. Let's get a list of a few things, let's knock off a couple, and then present it to the board and work with your town administrator and go from there.
Okay.
I guess one question, just one last question, on the timing, so the 684 has been allocated. You think another 684 would be allocated fairly soon, because you're gonna present it at an upcoming meeting? And as far as thinking of projects above that dollar amount, we don't really have any idea when the 75, 100% would become available?
So if you're just thinking roughly timeframe, September, October for a third phase,
Okay,
and probably January for a
okay,
fourth phase.
all right,
It won't be too long.
okay.
We're still pretty far ahead of most places. And, you do have your own money.
Right.
So if there's immediate projects, do that. But part of the reason we're putting this in front of the commissioners on the 21st is because we do have towns whose submissions are over
Right.
their amount. And we tell them, go ahead and submit over the amount, because if we get to that, we'll do it. Otherwise, you'll at least get the money that's available.
Right.
So don't hesitate. Don't go crazy. If you're allotted, 1.2, don't submit something for $7 million. But if you submit for 1.5, that may be eligible in a third phase.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And just so you know, your team, does a lot of work getting this information, going on the website, filling out these applications. We've tried to make it as easy as possible, but it still takes some work. They've got to dig up the documentation. We have one applicant, and I will not name them, so don't ask, who for some reason just doesn't want to give us the information. They spend more time arguing about their interpretation of ARPA as to whether they have to give us that information or not. And part of me says, we have the money, we've set up the rules, we've asked a simple question. The time you've spent arguing with us, you could have found the document, sent it to us, and we'd be on our way.
Biting the hand?
Some people
Or the
might say
gift
that.
horse.
Yeah. It's just been so frustrating. They sent a 3-page email as to why they didn't think they needed to submit the one document we asked for. So we sent it to our counsel, who wrote them a nice legal opinion and said, yes, you have to provide it. Here's the page in the statute. And just because you thought you didn't have to provide it, doesn't mean you don't. So, please do try to follow through. And if we ask for something, East Bridgewater's been great. Whatever we ask for, they get. So, if every town were as good, we'd be all set.
And just in case, Charlie, is there anything that we haven't asked that you would think we should have asked or talked about?
No, I don't think so. I think all of you have covered the subject pretty well. And the thing is, as you've said, they're open to further communication, because they're interested, they want to see the money spent, obviously legitimately, for the benefit of the residents, benefit of businesses and such here in Plymouth County. So they have an interest in making sure it happens. You all do also.
Thank you.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better ourselves. Yeah, we really want to see everybody's success. So if that's it,
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
yeah,
Thanks very
good
much.
luck. Let us know if you need us back, and we'll be happy to come back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Make sure we give you our cards.
Yes, I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
So you can tell who does more work.
I thought my job was to make you look good.
Another success, Treasurer O'Brien.
I do my best.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks, for having us.
Thank you, everyone.
Appreciate
Happy to
your
come
time,
back
and I
again soon.
appreciate, as I said
Absolutely.
earlier, what you guys do.
Yeah, our pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for what you folks do. It's the success of CARES and the success of ARPA, as Charlie just said, was born by the collaboration between the county and the towns, and we're happy to keep that partnership going with East Bridgewater.
Yep, that's what makes it work.
Absolutely.
You.
Great.
All right,
Thank
have
you.
a nice evening.
Oh, thank you.
Charlie, always a pleasure. Call anytime.
Will do.
Any last comments on what we just went through?
Now, like I said, I'll try to get a little one-pager that kind of breaks out this much money from, these people, this much money from
Yeah.
these people, and some of the resources that you can look at, so that, kind of a cheat sheet maybe.
All right,
Can't
that'd be
hurt,
very
right?
helpful.
Yeah, I
mean,
think it would
it's
be
kinda
really
like walking
helpful.
through a
Okay.
fog right now.
Yeah, no, I understand. I understand.
Thank you for doing that,
Yeah, no
Molly.
problem.
Next thing, item on the agenda was the forms.
So I believe, Sullivan got passed along. So what, yeah, I don't need one. What the board did last night is, Rebecca had, we're gonna do two forms, one for the departments, because we know them, and not that we have fewer worries necessarily about what we wanna be able to do, but we need less information from them, not about the particular project, but who they are. They're in the family, so to speak. But we also have another form for the non-government departments. So all the individuals, nonprofits, businesses, anybody else who might want to apply. Rebecca did the one for the departments. I basically borrowed very heavily, liberally, from the town of Hubbardston, who had done a form for their non-governmental units. And basically took that, went over it with the board of selectmen last night. They're in good favor of using that form. It's not been sent out, it's not been publicized, because all this was done just last night. But what I think the board is ready to do is to move that forward, make those available to departments, make that available to the general public. I understand that the county commissioner and the treasurer were saying, well, maybe you need to be moving forward with this fairly quickly, relatively speaking. I think the board's feeling is that given everybody's vacations during the summer, given people folks from the outside may not be meeting as often, just as departments or boards, commissions may not be as meeting as often, is have the deadline set a week after Labor Day, which would be September 12th. That should give everybody more than 2 months, 2 months to today, to hear about this, to think about it, and to get an application in to you all and to the board. It may or may not be just one round of funding. I think some of it's going to depend on the timing of the commissioners, anything, though there's nothing preventing sort of saying, we're going to fund these things and then put these aside, not to say they're ineligible, but we're going to wait to see what money's available from the county before we start checking off more boxes. And it also provides a lot of time, whether it's you all as applications come in, or whether it's the departments or folks from outside this building, to ask questions. Just as you were asking, well, what's an eligible activity? Does this qualify? We should welcome those questions from everybody else also. And if we don't have answers, we can then contact Plymouth County in the meantime to say, Joe or Mary are interested in applying, or Joe's business or Mary's business, or Joe or Mary nonprofit is interested. Here's a description, not a full application, but here's a description of what they're trying to, we think it qualifies under this category. Or it may not qualify under any of the categories, we're going to be using the money the town's receiving. But to get a better sense before the application deadline, so that if people need to reformulate their application based on they're trying to fit within a certain category, they'll be able to do so. We'll have the applications, we have information about what the town is looking for in terms of applications for purposes, I mentioned buying a pencil is going to be an eligible activity. Yeah, it is, but it won't meet most of the criteria because it's not going to help a large number of people. It's not going to have a long-term effect. It's not going to, if we're looking for matching funds in the sense of if a community organization is saying, well, we need X amount, well, are you applying for other places? Are you getting money from other places? Are you using, are you going to be able to leverage what the town is providing you? It doesn't mean that any one project's going to meet every single one of the criteria, or it's a highly rated project, but those are the areas we're trying to emphasize is, more people or businesses to be affected, that it has a longer-term impact, that it won't have a large operating cost, at least for the town, that it will leverage other money, that it will be effective in the sense of if we're gonna spend 10,000 on something, on this, or 10,000 on that, which is gonna have a greater effect for the community, for the people who live here. And it'll be up to you all, once we have the applications in, to make some judgments and make some recommendations based on the criteria that are there.
So page 1 through 4 is the department
Yes.
application, and then it turns into
To
the
the-
application for
everybody
outside.
else, yeah. And the thing is, we're looking for more information because, if Tim applies for money, I know where Tim is. We know what the finances are of the fire department because they're sitting in Melanie's office and such. We don't know if, for an organization, are they capable of spending the money? Because one of the things, I think one of the reasons that Plymouth County is not wanting to just give money out or make eligible for community organizations, for businesses and individuals. And mind you, I was looking at the Hubbardston website, and they've given money out for ARPA already, and they were supporting some local businesses there. So it's certainly an eligible expense, is they're gonna whoever's gonna be giving the money out, whether it's the county or whether it's the individual community, they're gonna have to follow that money and make sure that it got spent on the things that the applicant said they were gonna spend the money on. We don't need a situation that an organization, and I'm not thinking that anybody in the community is gonna do this, but we don't need a situation that the East Bridgewater organization says, we're gonna spend money on X, and then they buy somebody a car. It should be absurd, but we just don't want to have a situation where, I'm more not worried about the people in the blue windbreakers, I'm more worried about the men in black with the white shirts and the black ties and the sunglasses coming in for a visit, and checking the books. So I think that's why the Plymouth County is not interested in doing that, because it puts them in a greater liability. It doesn't mean we shouldn't do that, but we need to be cognizant of the risks in doing so and be able to get more information from those organizations, from those businesses, to ensure that the money is going to be spent the way they're saying it's going to be spent, and that they actually need the money for those activities.
And looking through this and, getting to the back of the RFP area, that attached Renee, the decision criteria, I had in the back of my mind, I thought, something like this is what we need, and I think this is a great thing, and, somewhere in here, a column for, priority 1 to 10 or whatever, and see where things fit in, and that can sift out a lot of stuff and help you focus on what you need to focus on or wanna focus on across the board. I don't think we're prepared to discuss this tonight. Maybe have another meeting in whatever point in time to go through this and get ready. We want to be ready before we start bringing people in so that we know what our decision criteria, or whatever you want to call it, is going to be as we interview people or discuss with people what their project is.
Well, I think we're gonna have two parallel streams, and one, I need to get an application form out. And what I can say is that all this is subject to change, so that at least people are aware that they can apply. Because as much as right now the money's gonna be spread to each community based on population, just as with the CARES Act money, in the end, we were doing a better job of applying for funds than other communities were. In the sense of that Rebecca, most of all, had put in the work to gather the necessary documentation and submit. We got tests right. Plymouth County did a wonderful job of distributing tests at the last minute. They, I think it was hundreds of thousands of tests. We went down and picked it up. But we also did it in December. If you remember, we did a couple of drive-through, not clinics, but people could come by and pick up tests. One over at the Council on Aging and one over here at the elementary school back in December when the need was very high. We knew, we still had money available and we could apply for it, and we did. So we should get the ball rolling. We should be able to say to people, there is ARPA funds, here's what we're looking for in general. If you feel the need to change the criteria a bit, to talk with selectmen about doing so, by all means, during the next couple of months, we can do that. But I think I need to move the ball along at least enough so that people can start thinking, here's what, at least a first draft, what we're looking for in terms of projects.
It'd be our interim rule.
Pardon?
It'd be our interim rule with for the CARES Act.
And I think before, one thing I definitely want to look into, especially after hearing Plymouth County speak, is if we are looking to give money to people outside of town departments, what reporting requirements that brings to us and what level of liability that brings to us. But the reporting is a big aspect too, as far as would the recipient have the capacity to give us the information that we need? Can we trust the information that we get, and how much burden does it put on our town departments to report it? So, and that's a big reason why Plymouth County sounds like a big reason why they're not accepting it, so.
Great, all great points, and that's the type of thing that you'd want to reflect in that matrix, you know?
Right.
So, anybody want to bring up anything else on the application form tonight, or
How are we
just,
gonna publicize that? Do you have a,
Well, later this week, I'll get it up on the website, I'll get it out on Facebook. We don't use, I'll find a way of dealing with Facebook, let me put it that way. Since we don't,
The hub is a great place.
and then the applications will be,
available online,
Here,
it'll be available
or
here
online.
also, yes.
Yeah.
I'd imagine a
And-
letter would go, an email would go out to all the town departments.
Oh, and also, we have a department head meeting next week.
there really isn't a lot of time between now and September 12th, in my mind, anyway. I mean,
Oh,
2 months from
you know,
today?
And if the consensus from you all and the board of selectmen is, we get closer to the 12th, and maybe we don't have a lot of applications, or maybe we're seeing ones that don't quite qualify, but we're not seeing ones that do qualify, there's nothing preventing you all and the board from extending the deadline.
Okay.
Right,
You have to leave it at 2024.
right, right. It's good to set a deadline so we can at least get it going.
I think we'd be better off if we came to a finalized decision on this, the application criteria. And I mean, maybe I'm the only one that feels the criteria is important, but before we put something out on the hub or anywhere out the
I'm happy to
website,
wait. I don't know when you all would be meeting next.
that'd probably be our next discussion, or anything else that we want to come up. Possible future meetings is almost next on the agenda, so.
Would we be comfortable getting the application out to town departments, the shorter 4-page application out, where they might already have kind of projects lined up that they want to apply for, or do we want to hold on both?
I would say within the town with a provision that, this may change in the next couple of weeks. And then it'd be up to us to try and have a meeting within the next couple of weeks and hammer it out. I think it'd be good for all of us to take a week at least to go through this and think about what you think criteria might be added or is not needed, and kind of keep in the back of your mind whether it needs to be a separate criteria because it's a non-town department that's doing it, or whatever it is. Like Melanie talked about, the risk and the liability of those applications may be a little bit less than what we get from a major town organization. That makes sense?
Yeah, how about if we were to publicize that the applications will be coming? If you're interested, look for it, and we can finalize and really kind of hone that down
Right.
in the interim.
I can do that, yeah.
I think getting it out is very important. I think we can always work the kinks later on, even with the legal language saying that, this is a preliminary process. We are taking your application and reviewing it, but just know that there will be criteria that need to be met in regards to your application, so subject to change. So I think, I personally would rather have it be out because of the short time window, so people can have an idea, because like you said, give them the opportunity to request, ask questions, and we, reach out to the board and Plymouth County and see. But I do think that we should definitely get it out.
I agree. I think the faster we get it out would probably behoove us.
Move us along.
Yeah, because it's gonna be an ongoing process.
Yeah,
We're gonna get
it's
this
gonna be
back, and we're gonna have more
ever-changing.
questions,
Yeah.
Forever.
which will generate more questions.
Right, but see, that's part of the reason why I think it's more important to have the criteria done before you put it out there and have people coming to us with questions and, well, this is the way it looks now, but it could change in 2 weeks. And you got 3 applications come in that meet it and 5 applications that may meet it and things like that. And now you're just churning your wheels going through the same applications 2 or 3 times because you've changed the criteria and how are they addressing this new criteria and things like that. I mean, if we could commit and maybe meet next Tuesday,
I'm away.
I think I'm here. Should be.
I'm away. Vacation.
then,
I'll be here.
Dan?
I am here.
19th.
I think we shoot for that, and then, see what we can come up with between now, on our own. So when we get to the meeting, it's kind of productive, because we've already decided in our own minds what we think it should be, and then we just narrow it down to what we all agree on at that meeting, and go forward from there.
Anyone that can't make it, could you maybe share comments via email beforehand, or if you have comments of things that you want to add?
Thank you, Melanie.
I'm not sure if I can, but.
You want 6 PM?
Yep, I think that's gonna be our standard, right? 7:19, 6 PM.
What exactly will we be working on? John? Just,
I'd say this is the base, is
Go through this.
attachment.
starting on after the instructions and everything else on attachment A, is that what we're
Yeah.
looking at?
Yep, that's, looks like what the
Go to
basic
attachment A
criteria.
and the project request form and all the way to the end.
I think really, this page is what I'm talking about, the criteria.
Okay,
This is how you're gonna, it's a checklist to say, does this meet the requirements? Or does it not meet the requirements? And how are we gonna prioritize? We got 15 that meet the requirements, how do we prioritize those 15? They talked about, the effect on the town, that's a key thing. Is, how is it gonna impact the town positively? Or what are the negative impacts of it? It seems kind of like nitpicking, but when you get into, and I don't know how many applications we're gonna have, but when you start getting people coming in from outside of the town departments themselves, as Melanie pointed out, the risk there is greater, so we wanna reduce the risk by having a defined criteria that could eliminate a lot of the risks that come with those. Good.
I'm sorry, so my thing is, you wouldn't know to define this if you don't have the application to kind of assess the need.
Well, the rest of the application is here, right?
No, I'm saying like people like filing it out, like filling it out and then assessing if their business or their organization fits all
Right,
this.
for the other people putting it in, right, to send them
So is
this
this
and
for
then
the
say.
government? Is this only for the government part you're talking, or just for everybody?
The detailed one is more for the outside.
Oh, for the outside, okay. So what I'm saying is,
I mean,
that
In
to
the-
some extent, you should think about the government ones, though, somewhat on the same basis, in the sense of, if you have a department that says, well, I want to spend money, but it's really just for the people in my department, and it's not going to have any impact on residents, and, think of it in the same way. The ambulance, as an example, is going to be a long-term, 6 or 8 years worth before we have to retire and get another one. It helps all 14,000 people here in town. So it's certainly not that it necessarily meets all the criteria, but it meets some of them. And we would encourage departments to be thinking along those lines. Like I said, pencils are eligible, but they're not going to meet the criteria.
I think the criteria is important too, just So say we have $1 million and we get 3 applications each for $1 million, and you wanna be able to say why you pick one over another, because they're gonna be asking. You're gonna have 2 angry people with $1 million projects that get denied, and you have to have solid ground to stand on what you use to make your decision.
So, if I understand correctly, we're not gonna work on the town,
I don't, I mean, unless,
work on the,
and we have a town
exterior.
application, I think that's ready to go to the
so
departments.
just thinking aloud pretty much is, can we keep it simple? You know, not make it, I mean, because the town one is fairly simple. It's 4 pages, but there's not a lot of meat in it. And, you know, so could we keep the external application, I guess you wanna call it, the private sector, the organization, whatever you wanna term it? Keep it simple and just try to maybe work on this
Well, if you want. I
this
mean,
week and
if
then
you
submit it
want-
to each other?
If you want to try and scale down the external application, take a swing at it, yes. My thing on that is, like I said, if I have Tim applying for it, I know most of this information already. If I have somebody from outside, I don't. So we're going to be looking for more information from outside organizations
Right,
than we are from inside.
right. So you don't need to give us all the information up front. We're gonna look for it,
Well-
what you submit.
But I think for
Except-
the outside organizations, we want a lot of the information upfront.
Up
We
front.
wanna see
We
that.
do, right?
Because
They
I
really
don't wanna
want
go,
this
I don't wanna
money.
chase them down and say, okay, we got your application, now I need X, Y,
Okay,
Z.
yeah.
And I'm not suggesting to change the applications at all, either one of them. I haven't really gone through them, but I think the due diligence has been done by the town already on them. All I'm worried about is the one page, what's the criteria that's gonna measure the information that's on those applications?
And I think the town department should see the criteria as well.
Right. To get an indication of what we're looking for
Right.
just from them also.
I think Melanie made a really good point, though, that if there's limited funding and you get multiple requests, if this is transparent from day one,
I think you can see it just from your time on the finance committee, that you need
Yeah.
to be able to
You
back
could-
up.
if
your
it
decisions.
changes after you start accepting applications, someone could come in and you change that because you didn't like my project. You don't wanna get into any of that.
Prioritize it from the beginning.
Right.
Yeah.
And if we do it within a week, that's not terrible.
Yeah.
But with the way it's set up, it's gonna be like that, because even then, they said that it's fluid, it's forever changing, it's not set in stone, like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like the way ARPA fund is allocated, it's subject to change at any given time, and people gotta know that.
It's
So
always
you can't
internal.
really, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So in terms of like making it stick to the thing, and then, but that's what life, part of life, it's some.
Well, we may find, we'll see what the applications that come in are like.
Right,
But we have to at least, for all of you, give you some guidance, but also give the applicants some guidance about the type of projects we're looking for. And so, you know, that we're emphasizing long-term impact, for instance. We need to say to them, you know, I'll give you an example. Let's say we spend $100,000 on a playground, or we spend $100,000 on a festival. Okay, I'd rather spend $100,000 on the playground than the festival. The festival will be a one-shot, it'd be a nice thing to do. I'm not saying it's not eligible or anything like that, but it will happen and it's done. Whereas the playground, mind you, there'll be maintenance costs and everything like that, but it's a more permanent benefit to the townspeople.
So, just using that as a thought example, right, is the playground, there's gonna be ongoing maintenance costs.
Yeah.
Are the maintenance costs gonna be figured into the ARPA money, or is that expected
You don't
from the town?
want to, because you're going to say, in the long term, they're gonna be part of the operating budget for the town. And so, that's gonna be one of the things that you all look at, and the board of selectmen's gonna look at and say, this might be a wonderful project, but we will not be able to support it in future years.
So that
So-
might be something maybe
Right.
we would
Criteria.
add to the criteria.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
That's the
I'm
thing.
looking
Yeah.
through them right now,
I
but.
think that-
yes.
Yeah, I just saw this, and it was something I thought about, the priority thing, and I haven't had a chance to go through it, but I feel strongly that we need to do this before we move forward sending things outside the town. I mean, the department heads are aware of this stuff, and they're, I don't wanna say more flexible, because it might be misinterpreted, but they're more used to, you know, things changing at the last minute on them.
But, yeah, communities are, but I think if you put it out there, I think people should, you know what I mean?
But I don't wanna, really, at the end of the day, I don't wanna spin our wheels
Yeah,
doing things and then say, okay, the criteria changed, so the 16 we did last week, we gotta redo all of them again, get those people to come back, and I don't even know what the numbers are gonna be, if they were gonna be 16, but just to be prepared for it.
okay.
Anything else on the application and meeting next week?
Next week's fine with me.
Okay, one last chance for anything anyone wants to bring up? Gigi,
Nope.
Ken?
No, I think a lot of the questions were answered by the commissioners.
Ken? Nadia?
No.
Dan?
How you doing golfing this year?
Depends on what week it is.
Tell me
Even
about
days I'm better than odd days. Melanie? All right.
Thank you.
And,
Make a motion to.
process-wise, are you guys gonna post the meetings, or is it something I'm supposed to do?
Posted.
Okay, thank you.
Make a motion to adjourn.
it. Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.